I woke up this morning thinking about my grandpa, who, even though he died more than 6 years ago, he continues to be one of the most consistent sources of inspiration for me. And many of my extended family feels the same way. And the specific memory that for some reason I woke up thinking about was there was one time many years ago that until my grandpa passed away right before his 99th birthday, he was in exceptional health, except for his hearing wasn't so great. And that meant, a lot of times plans happened around him without him being involved in those plans. So there was one time that my mom had organized, her kids and my cousins and her siblings and their spouses to come over to my grandparents' house and just to have like a pizza dinner kind of thing. So she shows up at my grandparents first, and she walks in with all these boxes of pizza. And my grandpa's like, "What are you doing with all that? We're never going to eat all of that." She's like, "We're just going to eat it and then we'll freeze it, whatever." And, unbeknownst to him, there were 15 or 20 people that were planning to come over. So then, a few minutes pass and my cousin walks in and he's like, "Margot, so great to see you. Are you hungry?" And she goes, "Yeah, I'm starving, Grandpa." And he's like, "Oh, check out all this pizza. Have some of this pizza." And then my brother and his girlfriend walk in and he goes, "Alex, Elise, amazing to see you. Are you hungry?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're starving." And this goes on time and time again. And I just think about this, there's not so much meaning that I derive from that, but just how wonderful it is that family shows up for each other. And just something about ignorance being bliss, and my grandpa was able to share all this joy and with his family that, of course, originally he argued against, but then he was so grateful that it all happened. He was like, "Miraculously, all this pizza's here because 25 of my family members are here." So anyways, this morning I woke up thinking about that story and wanted to share it.
Oh, thank you. I love that.
So hello, I'm Don,
And this is Gina.
and we're with Focused Healthy Family. And this is podcast number 67. And today we're talking to Adam Salzman with Adventure EXP. But before we get to that, we're going to give a moment for our sponsor.
Our sponsor is Q Sciences. I've been a representative for Q Sciences for over a year. I found this company through a friend and did some research and reading about these products. And I really liked what I found when I learned about them, the research and time that they've put into the quality of these products to be better absorbed into the body. Things like the vitamin D spray. Our youngest was on a capsule vitamin D, and yet vitamin D levels remained the same with follow-up checkups. And with the spray, it increased
pretty strong.
almost double.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're talking her levels were maybe 20, and I want to say they went up to 47 or something around that range. And the sleep spray is another great one. It's got melatonin, 5-HTP, and I believe another herbal supplement in there. And because it's a spray, you spray it on your tongue, it gets absorbed more quickly into your body to be more effective to help you in the moment. We're using the B12 spray. We've used the vitamin C spray. They have a Q Max product, which is a multivitamin.
And they also have the CBD, different, a variety of different.
It's full spectrum hemp oils. They even have a THC free version. It comes in different flavors. There is a mushroom.
Oh yeah.
Armor. It's called Q Armor. It's a powder, and I get the chai flavor. Put it in my chai tea for a double chai drink.
So instead of, as they say, flushing your supplements down, the toilet or the drain, you want to get something like this that's fully absorbed. It's like flushing money down the toilet too, if you're not using a supplement that absorbs well and does well for your body. So that's what Q Science is really about. It's a good, well absorbed, high nutrient product.
They have multiple products. They have child specific products. They now also have some facial cream products. I've been using a night cream to minimize the effects of sunlight and stress and aging on my skin. And they have a hemp lotion That's also a wonderful product that we've tried. So check us out, learn more. You can find the link at our website.
www.focusedhealthyfamily.com. You can also go to focusedhealthyfamily.com/Q Sciences, the letter Q and Sciences.
With an S at the end.
With the S at the end, yes. And we're back. And in today's podcast, we're talking to Adam Salzman. Adam has worked in the educational programming for over 9 years, involved in everything from study abroad to recruiting international students for global internships, and now supporting American students on the destination work programs through Adventure EXP. Adventure EXP hosts destination work programs that help young people ages 18 to 24 travel to exciting locations and empower them to work to offset their cost of their travel. And that's just a part of his bio, and you can get the full bio on our description of the podcast itself. And well, I want to welcome you, Adam. It's good to have you on here. This is such a neat thing. I'm so envious of it. As I told you, I want the 64-year-old program of the same thing, because I want to travel like this too. But welcome and thank you for being here.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and thanks for having me on.
And I got a kick out of your story, and I was wondering that was your grandfather also the one that gave you this adventurous spirit?
I would say in some ways, certainly he had a plan for all. I'm trying to remember the exact number of grandkids. 25 grandkids he has.
Wow.
Or like I mentioned, he passed away 6 years ago. He had a plan for each and every one of us. And for me, he always said I was going to work on the world stage. So I think in a way, in his mind, I was studying finance at the time, just graduated with a degree in finance when he passed away. So I think he had an idea of me being chairman of the Federal Reserve at some point. So I've taken a different approach, but I would say absolutely he participates in my daily life to this day, and to not give him at least some piece of credit would be squandering that.
We'd love to hear more about your story and how you got into this program with empowering young people going on these journeys.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It really, I would say I can draw a direct link to the life I'm leading now with Adventure EXP and this organization I'm running, to me at 15 years old when I was a young punk going through a rebellious stage pretty hard. And I took my first job as a busboy at the local hibachi restaurant. At that time, I wanted to drop out of high school and move to Aruba to open up a glass blowing shop. And, I took this job at this hibachi restaurant, and it was my first time like properly working. And I remember looking myself in the mirror after the first day. I'm like caked in grease and sweat, and my arms are throbbing. And I realized I need to go to college, and I can't do this for the rest of my life. And the reason I include that is to say that even though it was a Japanese restaurant, it was owned and run by Chinese people. So I started learning about the Chinese culture and the Chinese language really just through osmosis, which then inspired me to study international business, finance, and Chinese, then spending several months in China studying, interning, working, and traveling, which then I worked as a study abroad advisor, then working to bring international students to the US for internships. And that really led me to, there should be a program like this for young Americans to be able to travel in their own country and internationally, because there are transferable skills of them working and earning their right to learn in a beautiful location. So what I would say is it really started with me working as a busboy at 15 and a half years old, and not at all knowing what I wanted out of life. But in many ways, I figured out what I didn't want out of life.
Mm-hmm.
So well, also the Aruba, I almost forgot about that. I hadn't told Gina, because we were talking about Aruba, and I said, well, that's been our in our mind, our destination of our life. So that's I thought that was really cool. Let's talk a little bit about what you do with it, the Adventure EXP.
Mhm. Yeah, the program is we work with young adults and set them up with seasonal jobs and housing in great locations, and then guide them on the experience that while they're working in this location for a defined amount of time, let's say 3.5 months living in Aspen, Colorado, they also get access to all sorts of personal and professional development courses that we put them through, which includes career coaching and personal finance education, effective decision making, things like that. That really, it's in some ways it's in line with the things they kind of forgot to teach us in school, that we encourage young people to learn in this environment where, for me, meaningful travel, meaning traveling with a purpose to a specific location, continues to be my most impactful teacher. So my vision is to help young people use the vehicle of travel as a tool to really be the best version of themselves, and then us giving them the resources that they, may or may not know about, like teaching them how to build a budget and the concept of compound interest. Learning that concept at 18 years old, when you are making money and living in a unique place, it pays dividends for the rest of your life. And also that concept can be built on in other aspects of life that we try and expose our students to. So that's really kind of the quick intro of the types of programs that we're running for young people.
That's just so exciting and sounds like so much fun. And I love that idea. Even if they take a job that's not something they're going to pursue, full time, that they're learning skills, being immersed in a situation. And I love how you support them through that, giving them other resources, like you said, things that we don't learn in school, learning about budgeting and interacting with people, and just that experience. I think experience is so much more important, especially now, than even the college education. That's what employers are looking for, young adults who are able to communicate and jump into a work experience.
Yeah, handle things themselves, problem solve, all of that. And that sounds like that's exactly what this program helps to do, so.
That's exactly it. Yeah, it's them working as, let's say, a front desk agent at a luxury resort in Park City, Utah, but they're actually interested in anthropology or archaeology when they go into college. We work very hard to help them understand the transferable skills of the interactions that they're having with someone in this luxury resort setting could very well be part of fundraising when they're working as a museum curator in their future career, and they're able to draw on those conversations and the way to interact with people, and how do you approach someone for a hard ask, or approach someone with a conflict and things like that. We really see it as a training ground to help a young person develop those skills that then they're going to use regardless of the decisions that they make in their life, to go to a trade school to be an electrician, or to go be an anthropologist or a museum curator, right? And that really is just the cornerstone of, we want our students to be working on the experience, which also makes it affordable, and it makes this type of travel accessible to young people who maybe otherwise couldn't afford to have these travel experiences because they're earning money. And then guide them on that process of, how do I articulate the skills that I gained in this job, even though I don't suspect I'm going to be a dishwasher at a ski resort for the rest of my life. Still, there are transferable skills.
Sure. And being able to be out at a fun, exciting place. The places I was reading on the website that they get to travel to are vacation spots and exciting places to go, that they're getting that adventure as well as being engaged in a responsible activity with the job.
Well, I was kind of curious, do you do training with them before they go? Do they have almost like classroom training, or do you do all the training on location or wherever they end up?
Yeah, great question. Training in terms of being successful in the program does start from the point of enrollment, where we're working with students on building their resume, prepping for interviews, building their budget, helping them review specific program locations, and choosing which ones they're actually interested in. So part of that kind of training and development starts from initial point of enrollment. But then in terms of the specific job success, the employers we work with, we really call them our partners, because they get what we're trying to do with young people, and they take a lot of ownership in the training and orientation and on with our students. Wow, storm's coming in. Sorry if you can hear that lightning and thunder in the
Oh
background.
my.
Just the thunder in the background. But anyways, they really kind of take that ownership to train our students, to participate and be successful in the experience. So it's a holistic approach, between us and the employers that we work with to prepare the students to succeed on the experience.
So with that, how long are they typically within the program from the time they sign on with you?
The programs range 2 to 12 months and vary based on location, because one location may have seasonality that is a little bit more extended than another location. The average time to participate is about 3.5 months, which we really think, just as a philosophy, is really kind of the sweet spot, because it gives them the time to go through the honeymoon phase or those initial challenges of like, whoa, what just happened? What did I get myself into? And then they're able to, really settle in, meet people, and establish relationships, find new hobbies, get settled into their job, and also get settled into their budget, right? Because the way we like to say it is expenses are always going to be a little bit wonky when you move to a new location, because you maybe go to the Whole Foods because you don't know there's an Aldi or a less expensive grocery store down the road, or you go to this restaurant where a burger is $25 and you didn't realize there's a $7 burger next to your housing. So 3.5 months we really consider to be kind of the sweet spot that presents meaningful challenges and opportunities for the joys that we expect our students to experience.
And I'm guessing you help them with the housing part too. Is that part of the program?
We do. Yeah. Housing, I would say, maybe is the most logistically challenging piece of young people saying, oh, I think it would be really interesting to go live in a ski town for a season. So us stepping in to provide that, to make sure that it's, number one, it's safe, and it's affordable and in reasonable transportation distance to their job. And really, it's about managing expectations to say, hey, in this housing, it's going to cost this much. This is the furniture, and you're going to live with this many people that are all going to be on AdventureEXP's program. What it does is it sets those expectations. So, our students aren't surprised when they arrive, because I know in my, lifetime of independent travel, I've done a lot of solo travel. Surprises can be difficult to navigate your way out of, especially in a foreign country and currency and foreign language and things like that.
Well, yeah, and my mind just went blank. I had a thought and it just wiped out. I guess talking a little bit about, you talked about safety, because I think to me that would be a parent's concern or thought with this is, they're traveling to a foreign country, or they're going to a place that they're not there with them. What you mentioned it, and get a little bit more into what some of the things you do to make sure of their safety when they're on their adventure.
Yeah, I appreciate that question. First and foremost, I would say parents play such an important role in the success of our program, because what it takes in order for a young person to be confident and have the support to succeed in an environment like this really does start with the parents. So whether a student is taking a gap year, or they're studying abroad in college, or they're going to go teach abroad in between undergrad and their graduate school, parents participating in that process to make sure that they're asking the questions that a young person maybe isn't thinking of is just so fundamentally important. So I wanted to include that, because we work very closely with our parents, and I think it adds an interesting element and important layer to our program. In terms of safety, all of the locations that our students are living and working have all gone through a vetting process with our team to make sure that it is safe, it's affordable, it's in reasonable transportation distance to their housing, that there are worthwhile outlets for students to consider, instead of, just being in like a party environment, or being completely out there in a totally remote location with no outlets for anything, for any hobbies or things like that. So, it really kind of starts with, like I mentioned, employers are really our partners, and then us doing the work on the front end to make sure this is a legitimate job and a legitimate employer in a location that can set these young people up to be successful. And the vetting that we do, I really do think it sets a framework. So a student, we think a lot about what does success look like on our program. Ultimately, I don't think we're entitled to an opinion of what a student does after the program, but on the program, we want to give them at least a framework to, fit into, and then they decide how do they navigate that time outside of work and outside of the programming that we offer. And they get to be more intentional about that time, as well as we check in with our students throughout their program, and they have 24/7 access to us because things will come up. Living and working on your own, especially if it's your first time doing it, it's a big deal, and we're very sensitive to that. I think is the right way to say it.
Yeah, we have a 21-year-old who moved 3 hours away and has been living on her own for over a year. And she's probably texts and talks to us more now that she doesn't live in the house. Just,
that's nice to hear.
Car repair and
my
logistics of managing, and there is a lot that goes into it.
But it's a learning experience, as what you're doing too is a learning experience. I was just kind of curious. This seems like because I think about the gap year. A friend of mine did that from high school into college, took a year off and backpacked through Europe. And I was just wondering, how would you sell this to somebody over backpacking through Europe? Because I remember he ran into a little bit of problems money wise. I think running out of money at a certain point or something. He had to telegraph back that but back to his parents. I don't know what you do it now. Telegraph.
I get it, like a money order kind of thing. He's like,
I guess right? I'm on the Wells Fargo wagon heading out west here.
That's hilarious.
But just a thought, that probably isn't too hard of a sell, I would think. But would that be a thought to convince somebody doing something like this versus doing a backpacking trip?
It's a really interesting question. And it's something that I think about a lot, that this is a business, so I want it to succeed. But at the same time, the experiences that we're offering, I think there's something to be said that you can't be everything for everyone. And if you strive to be everything for everyone, you end up being really nothing for no one, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is an important just distinction to make in our minds, and me certainly as a business owner to think about that. So in terms of selling students on the experience, on a personal level, and also what I've seen, what I've trained my team to participate in, and what I've seen other gap year programs, kind of the selling approach is really about giving young people the tools to think about all of these different opportunities, because there's no shortage of opportunities. If you want to go backpack around Europe, if you want to open up a pottery studio and start an Etsy store, if you want to do a travel and work program, if you want to do language immersion in the Sacred Valley of Peru, there's no shortage of opportunities. And I think that's indicative of life, right? There's always more choices than there are decisions that can be made. So the stance that we take is really just helping students understand, number one, what is your budget of time, money, and energy that you can put into this experience? Maybe you're looking for that traditional gap year between high school and college, and you've got, let's say, 9 months before you actually need to get into college mode and you want to be back home and be with your family. Okay, so from a budget standpoint, you have 9 months of time, and let's say your parents have agreed to give you $5,000 to support your gap year. Once you're realistic about your financial and time limitations, then you can start thinking critically about how do I maximize the return on investment for the time, energy, and money. So that's number one. And then number two, what do I actually want to accomplish? Do I want to gain language skills? Do I want to improve my resume? Do I want to close in a relationship with a distant family member? Do I want to explore a new hobby? Do I want to see a new country? And I've always wanted to see the Great Wall of China, right? So actually thinking about what do you want to accomplish? And the third one, and I think this is a really important one, is how comfortable are you with independence, right? So as you see across all programs, our program is designed to be a slightly more independent experience than others. And in gap programs, you'll see, with more structure, which means less independence, with more structure typically comes more cost and specific defined learning outcomes, like getting a wilderness first responders certificate, for example. Whereas as you move away from the more dependent programs where you're with a specific cohort and you have an on-site program coordinator with you planning a daily and weekly schedule, then there can be more independent life skills development. So what I would say is that thinking about your comfort with independence is really, it's a more playful way of thinking about this opportunity, because there's so many, choices out there, that you really come back to, what environment do I think I'm going to be most successful in? What do I want to accomplish? And what limitations do I have? So it's kind of a mini TED talk, just to say that I would say in this industry, it's much less about selling, in my opinion, and it's more so about guiding the young person to say, if it's not a full yes, I think it should be a no. And that's really, I don't know if that's standard across the industry, but I feel this way, because if you know it was a full yes on the experience that you chose, then when you're presented with those joys, and when you're presented with those challenges and frustrations and a sense of accomplishment, then you know that you made that right choice. Whereas if you're hemming and hawing and it's only a 50% yes, then those challenges, they're going to be easier to throw in the towel because you weren't committed initially, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, yeah, what do you think about that?
No, that was a
Makes a lot
good
of
answer
sense,
to
right?
it.
They've got to really be invested in what they're going to do, and is it the right fit for them, so that they're not jumping into something that's beyond their capabilities, right? You want to stretch a little bit, but
Yeah.
to the point where you're not going to succeed.
Well, I find it kind of funny that we're talking about making children independent on Independence Day. This is 4th of July.
Nice.
This is being recorded. It'll go live 2 days later, but anyway. When the other thought is, how do you see this affecting, or does it have effect on resumes for a job, or does it have effect on college application? Does it help it or hurt it, or?
Great question. In general, so we offer career coaching as part of our program. We've spoken about transferable skills, but also I think working with a career coach and just having that session to say, this is what I've accomplished, this is what I'm interested in accomplishing, and finding a way to roadmap it between the two. Right. That's why working with a career coach is so beneficial. So all of our students get access to career coaches, and it's about connecting those dots. And whether it's our program or any meaningful travel experience that a student has, there are specific outcomes like self-advocacy and decision-making and leadership training and conflict resolution and things like that that are transferable, and finding a way to put them on your resume, in a cover letter, talk about them in an interview, and even talk about them just in casual conversation with friends and family after the experience. Having this type of having this experience and then going through the process of really digesting it and figuring out, what does this mean for me and how has this actually affected me positively and negatively. In our opinion, it elevates not only life experience, but actually new opportunities to get into new jobs and into universities and other graduate schools and things like that, because it's choosing a course that is objectively more difficult than the course that's laid out, where you go, this, like, I call it the career process flow, straight from high school, straight to college, to get a job, to get married, to have children, to retire, etc. Right? And there's nothing wrong with that career process flow, but it's in many ways laid out in front of us. So a student that's saying, I'm going to take time on and travel, and I'm going to go do an outdoor education program. I'm going to go work in a ski resort in Taos, New Mexico, and then I'm going to go do a language immersion program in Mexico. The challenges that they're presented with and the opportunity that they seized, universities see benefit in that. And the research shows that gap year students are graduating on time, whereas, the national average of non-gap year students is closer to 6 years as opposed to a 4-year graduation, as well as the students are coming in with much more, a greater sense of self and a greater sense of purpose of what they actually want to accomplish. So I would say, qualitatively, in the students that we've worked with, we absolutely see the benefit. And then quantifiably, you can see the benefit of students that have studied abroad or have done a gap year or some sort of meaningful travel, whether it's AmeriCorps or Peace Corps, things like that. It absolutely does elevate, job prospects and university prospects.
Yeah. I don't know if Don had this discussion with you when he first met you, but we've homeschooled our kids and taken a very eclectic approach and very hands-on immersion and learning through life and different opportunities. Our middle child went with her aunt to
not SeaWorld.
No, Florida Keys Dolphin Research Program. And I was looking at some different curriculum one time and, studying what, animals of the sea and that. And it's like, she was there. She got to see them train.
She swam with them.
She got to swim with them, and just having those hands-on opportunities are so much more powerful, than sitting behind a desk. I went to high school, then went straight from there to college, and you get overwhelmed with the being talked to and having to read and study and follow these things that are really kind of set out for you. But having those choices to make those decisions can be so empowering.
Oh, I was too serious during school and didn't enjoy it and do the things I probably should have done. I think I don't know. I guess it came from how I was raised or whatever. But yeah, and I had the opportunity to be a exchange student in Spain my junior year of high school, and was going through the process because my high school Spanish teacher she really liked me a lot, so she was really trying to get me to do that, and I was working towards it. And then my father passed away that summer, and so it threw everything off, and I didn't go. And it's kind of one of those small regrets I have in my life that I didn't take that adventure, because I think it would have been life changing for me, so anyway, I don't know why I went down that road necessarily, but
thanks for sharing that, Don.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Do you think, looking back, do you think you made the right decision at the time? I mean, given being so young and dealing with the death of a parent, I can imagine.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, because I think I would have been. I was always a homeboy anyway. I mean, mama's boy. I trailed. I hung on to her coattails. Going everywhere with her. So I think it would have been challenging as it was. And I might have been in that middle ground between yes and no, that it may not have been effective for me. So yeah, I guess I did. Like I said, I can now look back very easily and say, oh, I wish, I would have gone, and that would have been fun and all that. So much easier now for some reason, but
yeah, in that moment, I mean, at 17, dealing with, the death of your father, and just
yeah,
a lot to process. And like you said, it wasn't a full yes, so
yeah,
it wasn't the right path for you. I'm on those lines.
But I'm ready for the 64-year-old program when you get it going. So.
It's coming, Dom.
I'm curious, from a financial standpoint, a student that comes to you and doesn't have much financial resources to get started in the program, is there that opportunity for kids who, kind of are coming with nothing into it?
Yeah, great question. Just in the space of meaningful travel as a whole, I think there's in some ways a misconception, but it does have some justification that this type of travel experience, like study abroad and gap year, maybe is outside of a price point that a family or an individual can afford. And really, in many ways, that's where the kind of the niche that we fill is that our program is free for students to participate in. And the way we're able to offer all this programming is the employer partners, they actually pay us a fee for finding them seasonal staff, which is an amazing way that we get to offer all of this, these learning outcomes and support and guidance and mentorship without the students actually having to pay. So we work with a lot of students that maybe they did the more structured programs, the outdoor education program in the fall, and then not only are they yearning for that independence and they're yearning for some work and real life exposure, but they're also at the very end of their budget, right? Because they paid that program fee. And then there's another side of, we work with students that are aging out of their youth aging out of the foster care system, for example, right? So they don't have any of the financials that, let's say, a quote unquote traditional gap year student would have. But we really fundamentally believe the learning outcomes that come from taking time on through the vehicle of travel, they're too valuable to not be accessible to everyone. And finances, unfortunately, do get in the way. So with our program, really the only expense associated with it is traveling to that location, which we do also offer scholarships, especially for, the youth aging out of the foster care system are a really good example, because, having access to that type of scholarship, even though a flight, let's say, is $300, maximum to get to a new location, not everyone has access to $300 of disposable income. income. So really working to meet the student where they're at, I see as our primary responsibility that we have. And it's not just us. And, I'm very happy to participate in a space where there are other programs that are taking initiative to make their programs accessible, like offering, scholarships and supporting them with the flight process and getting there, as well as being able to tap into 529 funds and financial aid, because maybe it's, it's credit bearing or for college credit. So there are creative ways. And what I would say, anybody who's thinking about it, thinking about meaningful travel and not sure how to fund it, which is such a logical thing to think about. Checking out the Gap Year Association is such a worthwhile organization. Gap year is not just the traditional sense of 18 years old between high school and going to college. We work with students that aren't on the path towards college. They're interested in, being an electrician or going to culinary school, and they want to travel before then. Or students that have just graduated undergrad and they're going to dental school and they want to do something like this in between. Or a student who goes to college and they're just like, whoa, this is not the environment I'm going to excel in. I need to figure out something else rather than spending $30,000, to try and find myself. So anyways, what I would say is that from a financial standpoint, it really is about, our program can very much be a trail between not having any funds to travel and then, participating in another, like, let's say a language immersion program, because the students do earn money and they're still getting the excitement of traveling to a new place.
Sure.
And then there's also many other programs that work, in my opinion, very, very well at, meeting the students where they're at to use financial aid and things like that.
That's wonderful. Yeah, we did a whole series on foster care. And
Yeah.
interviewed a number of people at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I want to connect you with those people too, because Richard, I remember Richard Villasana is a person that helps search for family members for foster care to help put them in a, what does he call it, forever home.
Yeah.
So I think connecting you with that we interviewed
Quite a few people
at that, even a local person here that I know very well who works with kids that go in that after 18 period. Because we were shocked when, Richard was the one that told us that when they hit their 18th birthday, literally it's that day they're dropped and they're out of the system. And I thought that was shocking, for one. And, and unfortunately they don't have a lot the resources to really prepare them as well as they need to for that time. So yeah, if that's good, and you can go back and anybody in the audience can go back and listen to those podcasts. Is
February, I believe.
Yeah, we did a series on it, but I'll connect you with those people, because I think it would be a good connection for you.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, I really appreciate that. In working with the youth in foster care, I love working with all of our youth. And I think regardless of kind of, what they're coming in with in their toolbox of life, there's an opportunity for them to grow in this type of experience. There is just something, there's a Jewish concept called tikkun olam, which means an individual's unique capability and in some ways a responsibility to fix the world. And when I think about working with the youth in foster care, it has something to do with tikkun olam, I would say, just because, what those individuals are coming in with. I think having the opportunity to just go be somewhere new and be looked after by us, have that mentorship, but also just to have meaningful challenges in like a new setting and in a normal work setting. I just think it helps lay a foundational piece that they get to build off of for the rest of life. So anyways, I just wanted to share that I feel so strongly about working with that population.
That's great. Yeah, it's nice that there's so many different opportunities, because I know when I was growing up, if you didn't have the funds to do these adventures, then, you didn't do them. And there's so many more opportunities now and access to it. Just things are easier to find and locate. And we'll have to share a connection to the Gap Year Association. It sounds like you guys are part of that.
Yeah,
and
I'm going to put that on.
They assume they have other resources of other programs that are out there.
That's exactly right. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of members, members of the Gap Year Association, but then outside of that, other program providers that, the thing I like to tell to students when they're in the initial stages of thinking about traveling on some sort of a program is, don't let yourself get discouraged by the number of options. The reason there's so many options is because there is the perfect option for you that fits within your budget, your comfort with independence, and the goals you actually want to accomplish. It exists, and it might take some time and some creativity to find the right one, but it does exist. And that's why there's so many wonderful program providers out there.
Well, and saying that, because this is a great conversation, and I think we could probably go on for a couple hours talking about it. But letting the audience know, and again, we'll have this up there on the description now, but how they best can get a hold of you and find out more about you. So yeah, if you could maybe lay out some of that, that would be great.
In terms of our organization, you can find us at adventureexp.com. And like I mentioned, we are a member of the Gap Year Association, so you can find us there. Reach out to us individually. You can submit an application or book an intro call if you're interested in learning about our program, and you can do that directly on our website, as well as in all the links on our social accounts on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, etc. That I believe is listed all in the description here, so you can find us in that way.
Okay,
Cool.
Great. So any other last thoughts or comments you want to say to our audience and, typically parents listening to this?
I think supporting your child in taking time on in life through the vehicle of travel, regardless of if that's backpacking in Europe, doing a program like ours, or studying abroad while they're in college, or doing the Peace Corps after graduating, their undergrad, really meeting your child where they're at and encouraging them to have this experience. I've certainly seen it in my life. It continues to pay dividends. And I think about arriving in Beijing, not knowing anybody, barely speaking the language, figuring out how to take a taxi to get to my dorm, and then getting settled to figure out Wi-Fi. And at the time, it was the most important thing in the world, and it was so challenging. But now I think about things differently because of those experiences that I've had. And it's certainly trained me where I've been able to travel to so many countries, in many cases solo travel, that makes me think about things differently. And I know I problem solve in a different way because of those travel experiences that I've had.
Sure. Yeah, it gives you quite a perspective when you had to show up in the country and not know how to speak the language and figure out how to do things.
Well, and for the parents thinking about, you're supplementing their education with the things they really need to learn versus what they learn in school, so that's great.
Yeah, one other thing I'm really excited about is we're adding a new series in our education modules centered around mental and emotional health. And it's things like dealing with loneliness and isolation, or dealing with grief, how to form healthy relationships, and how do relationships work, and what does attraction actually look like, right? It's like when I'm thinking about, and we're actually building these modules right now to go live with them for our fall cohorts, I just am frankly disappointed that our school system isn't centered around teaching these concepts, because they're so important to living a productive and happy life, right? What does it actually mean to be happy? I've done the corporate life of getting a great salary and great benefits working in corporate finance, and that wasn't the impact I wanted to make on the world. So I've had to kind of find my own path, and in many ways create my own that checks a lot of the boxes, but not all of them. So anyways, I'm also just very excited about this mental and emotional health series that we're working with many mental health professionals to incorporate some of these important concepts that, again, they kind of forgot to teach us in school.
Sure. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's a big area that we talk about.
And we'll work with too. I work with the emotional side of it with the EFT work that I do, the tapping work that I do. So I would love to talk to you about that, and maybe have you back on too when you get that fully going, and talk about how that's going.
And it's so important, I think COVID kind of brought it to light, the isolation, and just the anxiety, the impact of the changing world is having on our youth. And I think it's great now that there's commercials about therapy, and that this is more becoming a normalized thing. But you're right, the school system is not really set up with that, and it's so important, and especially if they're going off on an adventure and having to navigate those things. So
that's it.
Great.
Well, once again, Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, just the last thing to share is that my life partner, her name's Jordan. She's way cooler and smarter than I am, but she uses the phrase "everyone deserves therapy." And I was thinking about this. I was speaking with her about having these mental and emotional health, as a new series. And I was thinking about that. We're touching on some really important topics, right? Like loneliness and isolation. That's a big deal to work with a young person on that. But because it's all under the foundational piece of this is incorporated in therapy, that I just thought about what a wonderful thing if I get to work in an organization that participates in helping young people think about the value of being in therapy, because everyone does deserve it. And we have all these preconceived notions about what it might look like as, a parent having our child in therapy, or a child being in therapy, or a parent being in therapy, right? There's so many layers there. And I just think it's such a wonderful thing. And I have Jordan's words echoing in my mind now every day, that everyone deserves therapy. And I think it's such an appropriate way to frame it.
I love that.
Well, again, thanks for being here, Adam. We really appreciate it. It was a great conversation. The adventure is just such a neat idea and such a neat thing you're doing for kids. So that's great.
Yeah. So thank you for being here today. And that's our podcast. We hope everyone has enjoyed it. Again, you can learn more at the website and the links from this show, links to learning more about Adam and his organization and other resources there. If you've liked what you heard today, please leave us a comment, give us feedback wherever you're listening to this, or send us a message through our website at focusedhealthyfamily.com. You can see our blog there, our other podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Focused Healthy Family, Instagram, gina.focusedhealthyfamily. And remember, how you speak to your children today shapes their future and yours.
Thanks so much for having me.
Sure.